Hey guys, and welcome back to another Mystery Monday video on my channel. First things first, I do again just want to apologize for the background noise. There is always background noise in every single one of my videos. I do live with a bunch of other people and a bunch of dogs and a baby, so it's kind of inevitable that at some point during the video you will hear something going on in the background. So I do apologize for that. Today's Mystery Monday is going to be a little bit different than my usual Mystery Mondays, as it is not a true crime case, it is not a missing persons case. I'm trying to kind of steer away from those just a little bit and not do as many, because there are other mysteries that I come across that I think are just as interesting and just as important to talk about. So today's video is going to be a little bit different, but I'm really excited to share it with you guys. So with that all being said, let's get right into today's video. The mystery we are going to be talking about today on my channel is one of the oldest mysteries that I probably have ever talked about this far on my channel, and is probably the oldest mystery that I will ever talk about on my channel. So this takes place in July of 1936 when three boys headed out to an area known as Arthur's Seat, located just outside of Edinburgh, and they were looking for like rabbit burrows, I believe, and that is when they came across in the cave this little small hole that was visibly trying to be hidden. Whoever had put this hole here had covered it with these slats that were going across it so that whoever came across them hopefully wouldn't see it, but the boys did end up noticing that there was a hole in this cave. The young boys, I'm sure like anybody would, became very interested after seeing this little hole that had been visibly covered, and so they started to move the slats out of the way so that they could see what was inside. And that is when they moved all of the slats out of the way and they looked inside the hole and saw 17 coffins inside that were all about 3 to 4 inches in length. The boys, after coming across these strange mini coffin-like things, decided to open them up after finding them and see what was inside. And after opening them, that is when they found that each of these 17 coffins was holding a miniature wooden figure. To make things even stranger, it had appeared as if all of these coffins had been placed there at different times. Some of these coffins looked like they had been placed there so long ago that they were almost like decaying, and some of them were in such great condition that it seemed as if they were placed there quite recently. The coffins were all perfectly stacked in 3 tiers, 2 sets of 8, with the last coffin sitting perfectly on the top. All of these miniature dolls that were inside of the coffins were very obviously modeled after humans. They all had swinging like arms and were wearing like homemade clothing, with some of the fabric on the dolls dating back all the way to the 1830s. The dolls had eyes carved into them that were made to look as if they were open, and their faces just really resembled that of a human face. The next day at school, the boys' teacher, Mr. Ferguson, overheard the boys talking about this strange discovery, and Mr. Ferguson himself was actually a member of the local archaeology society, and so he then, after hearing the boys talk about this, asked the boys where they had found these dolls and these miniature coffins so that he himself could go and retrieve them. Unfortunately, when Mr. Ferguson went to retrieve these dolls and coffins for himself, there was only 8 of them that still remained in good condition, because the day before the boys had actually gotten into a fight when they found the dolls and began to whip a lot of the dolls and the coffins at one another. So today only 8 of these miniature coffins with the dolls inside still do exist. So after going and retrieving these strange miniature coffins for himself, Mr. Ferguson brought them home to his house, and he never really opened them or looked inside of them until he was at his home in his kitchen, and that is when he saw the strange dolls that were inside of these miniature coffins. Just makes everything a little bit stranger that there were dolls inside. Now, I'm not exactly sure how news got out about these miniature coffins, but by the next day a lot of the local papers had already heard about these miniature coffins and the boys' strange discovery, and so they were already running a lot of news articles about this strange thing that had been discovered in Arthur's Seat. Immediately after the news came out about these coffins, many people came forward believing that they were the remains of some children's toy. Although creepy, they thought that that was all it was and there wasn't anything else to it. But majority of the people who heard about these coffins definitely thought that there was a more creepy and sinister backstory to where they came from and why they were in this little hidden cave that they were inside. The first person who wrote about the discovery of these miniature coffins and the miniature dolls stated in their news article that they believed that whoever had built these dolls and the miniature coffins and buried them in that little hole in the side of Arthur's seat was obviously lacking basic logical knowledge, and that they believed that the person wasn't all there or that their mental state just wasn't great. This is when people in Edinburgh started to strongly believe that witchcraft or demonology was behind these strange miniature coffins, and many believed that a Satanist had built these strange things and then buried them where they were then discovered. And in one of the local newspapers, they were quoted saying, "Our own opinion would be, had we not some years ago abjured witchcraft and demonology, that there are still some of the weird sisters hovering around Mashit's Cairn or the Windy Gowl, who retain their ancient power to work the spells of death by entombing the likeliness of those they wish to destroy." And the person who was writing these strange articles also praised the boys who had originally found the miniature coffins and the dolls with inside of them for destroying many of those while they were fighting. They whipped a lot of the coffins with the dolls inside of them at the ground at each other, completely destroying them. And the person who was writing this article praised the boys for doing so because they said that they were destroying the satanic spell manufactory that was built and that was revolving around these dolls and coffins. Nothing to this day has ever really been discovered about these miniature coffins. There has really never been any answers. Nobody knows where they came from, who built them, why they built them. And this news article that was praising the boys for destroying them and talking about all of the bad stuff that could have been going on with these dolls was the first news article that ran anything about the miniature coffins, so it is believed that that is what started the speculation of what these miniature coffins represent. Now, there is a lot of history on the coffins and what happened to them and how they ended up where they are today and all of that kind of stuff, but personally, I just don't think that it's that interesting. Today, the coffins that were discovered and do remain today in good shape, there's 8 of them again, they all remain on display at the National Scotland Museum, and you can go see them if you live near there. But I personally just don't think that the history of the coffins is that interesting. But what I do think is very, very interesting is some of the theories that have popped up about what these coffins are, what they could represent, and what they were doing in that spot that they were discovered. The first theory that I'm going to talk about in today's video about these miniature coffins is that maybe this burial was some kind of voodoo doll type thing. So obviously the voodoo doll thing kind of goes in hand with the witchcraft theory because voodoo is a type of witchcraft, and that would explain why all of these dolls looked like they were modeled after people. But what it doesn't explain to me is why all of the dolls were in perfect condition when the boys had originally found them. Even the 8 dolls that do remain today in the National Scotland Museum are all in pretty good condition. They don't have any scratches or burns or anything like that on them. Please correct me if I'm wrong or if you know more information on this topic, but I always thought that when people created voodoo dolls, they poked them with pins or did things along those lines, burned them, something like that, to represent the pain that they wished to inflict on the person who the doll was modeled after. And again, when these dolls were originally discovered, all of them were in perfect condition, although 9 of them have since been destroyed by the boys who had found them. But when they were discovered, they were all in great condition. They didn't have any pins sticking out of them, they didn't have any scrapes or burns or anything like that. The only way that I could really see this theory working or making sense is if the creator of these dolls didn't really care how the person the dolls represented died, they just wanted them dead, and that is why they were in the coffin, buried in that little cave that they were found in. I don't know how that sounds saying it out loud. It did kind of make sense in my head, and now that I'm saying it out loud, it might sound a little bit silly, but I hope that it makes sense to you guys. But that is the first theory in this case. Other people believed that this weird burial thing was some sort of tribute to lost soldiers. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys here. This theory is not one that makes complete sense to me. I don't really understand it, but a lot of people do believe this theory, so I'm going to share it with you guys and hope that you can comprehend it a little bit better than I could. Allegedly, to make this theory work, either today or back in the day, at some point, there was like this superstition among sailors that they would keep not only dolls, but dolls in coffins with them at all times as kind of like a talisman to bring them good luck. Now, I do comprehend, or I am able to comprehend what that means, but I've never heard that before in my life. Not that I'm a sailor or I know anybody who is a sailor, but I've never heard that before in my life, and I do think that it is a little bit strange that they would specifically want to keep tiny dolls with them inside of coffins. I've never heard that before. Anyways, in 1976, somebody who worked at the National Museum of Scotland came out and said that they believed that a merchant had built these dolls inside of the coffins and buried them in that area where they were discovered by the boys, and they were later going to come back and get them and sell them to sailors for good luck. Now, if sailors keeping miniature dolls in coffins with them for good luck isn't creepy enough, and I don't mean any disrespect if you're a sailor and you do that, you must know how creepy and weird that sounds, but for the person to have built these dolls in coffins and then buried them in an area that was so much like representing that of a like graveyard or a burial ground just doesn't make sense to me. It is so creepy and unsettling, and that is what I can't wrap my head around. So this theory that I'm going to talk about next is another one that confused me just a little bit, and it isn't one that is widely believed as the ones that I've already talked about or the ones that I will talk about next, but I did think that it was still interesting, and I thought that it was worth talking about just because it is still interesting and it is a theory. So in 1906, a woman came forward claiming that a deaf man had shown up to her father's workplace in many years beforehand, and that this deaf man had a piece of paper with him, and on this piece of paper he had drawn 3 coffins. He had written on the coffins the years 1937, 1938, and 1940. The woman claimed that after the Edinburgh miniature coffins were discovered, this man showed up again at her father's workplace, and this time he was noticeably angry, and he was kind of grunting at the father and just letting him know that he was quite angry. And after this, the woman went on to say that her father allegedly passed away in 1937, followed by 2 other very close family members who passed away in 1938 and 1940, just like the coffins that the man had drawn on the piece of paper. I guess that this theory kind of goes hand in hand with the voodoo doll type theory. Could it be possible that this man somehow put a curse on the family after it had seemed that they had discovered his miniature coffins? Although I don't know how the boys finding the miniature coffins and then their teacher finding the miniature coffins has anything to do with this woman's father. I don't believe that she was related to any of the boys or Mr. Ferguson, but maybe he thought that somehow this man had understood his drawing on the paper and that he had led them to the miniature coffins. I'm not sure. And this last theory that I'm going to be talking about is actually the most recent and is one of the first things that pops up when you type in the Edinburgh's miniature coffins into Google. This article is titled, "Author Claims to Have Solved Edinburgh's Coffin Doll Mystery," claiming that a man by the name of Jeff Nisbet had actually solved this mystery in 2018. He believes that the coffin dolls are somehow related to the Radical War of 1820. He believed that whoever had buried these dolls somehow were hoping that the work conditions or wanting the work conditions to get better for workers and things like that would rise again, and that this movement would start again. I'm not really sure how he linked the dolls to that. He thinks that there was some kind of hidden message in here. Maybe I didn't dive too deeply into this one, or not deeply enough, because I don't understand this at all. I'm going to link the article down below for you guys so you can look at it, but he does believe that these dolls were some kind of hidden message by somebody who was hoping that this movement would start up again after it had ended. Usually in these types of cases, there is one thing that I strongly believe over the other theories, but in this particular case, I'm really not sure. I think that I more believe the voodoo doll type theory, or at least something along those lines. I just can't make sense of somebody building 17 dolls that look like people and then putting them in coffins and then somehow taking them out to the middle of nowhere and burying them in the side of a cliff. I just can't make sense of it. I don't know why anybody would do that. I just don't understand it. I don't think that they were children's toys. I don't really agree with the last theory at all. I do think that the other theories are possible, but I just can't wrap my head around this, and I don't know what I think. But I'd love to know what you guys think, so please make sure to let me know in the comments down below, because I think that these are so interesting. This is one of the, again, oldest mysteries I have ever delved too deeply into. This is probably the oldest mystery I will ever cover on my channel and the oldest mystery I have ever covered on my channel, and I just think that it is so interesting. So make sure to let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But guys, that brings us to the end of this video. I know that it has been excessively loud through the entire time in my house while I was filming this video, so I really do appreciate you guys bearing with me through that if you have made it this far. But like always, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to comment down below what you'd like to see in my future videos, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss any future videos from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!